Hey guys, what's up? So the last video was talking about playing limited amount of combos on the river where there's loads of bluffing going on and loads of bluff catching going on and loads of raising going on. What I think is a really interesting board to look at or a situation to look at is playing against the big blind because the big blind has loads of combos. So a board texture which I think has started to get understood a little bit is going to be a board texture of like ace, queen, jack. So before PeerSolver came out, when PeerSolver first came out, the first thing I ever learned ever on PeerSolver was that on a board of ace, king, queen, that when we have pocket jacks under the gun against big blind, we want to triple barrel because our opponent doesn't have aces, doesn't have kings, doesn't have queens. We block jack 10. We can make him fold an ace later. We can make him fold a king later. We don't have that much showdown value. This was the first thing I ever learned, and this started to like open my mind to these kind of situations. And this was now, I think, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I guess. And it was with a guy called Dimmy. Oh my god, he's called. He's a German guy, a very nice guy. He used to run BitB with us. And he was the first guy who ever opened PeerSolver in any kind of coaching I saw. It was before it was on any kind of training site. And I remember him telling me about this Jacks and Ace King Queen. And since then, I've just been blasting it off. So the situation I want to look at here is a little bit different. It's going to be cutoff against big blind. So this is going to be the cutoff opening range. It's going to be 35%. You know, as always, you can always add some combos, take some combos away. It doesn't matter. It's just about the concentration. For out of position in the big blind, I think these hands always get free bet. Tens plus ace jack suited, ace queen always. And then the other combos like sometimes get free bet. Some guys will always free bet them, but I want to just give like it doesn't matter, you know, like I want to just give this is just kind of standard range a lot of people will have. So the board texture that we're looking at here is ace, queen, jack, ace of diamonds, queen of clubs, jack of spades. I've given in position 4 different bet sizes on the flop. So he's allowed to bet really small, 25%. He's allowed to bet 50%. He's allowed to bet 80%. And he's allowed to bet 125%. Out of position, I've given a 3x raise size, which is going to work out fine. You could give multiple raise sizes, but there's not going to be much raising happening anyway, so it's okay. On the turn, I've given 2 sizes for in position, a smaller size and a larger size. And out of position, I've given a block, a large size, and a really large size. In position on the river, as you know, I don't like third pot in position on the river very often, so I'm going to go for 50%, 100%, and then all in. But out of position, we do give the option of a block. So yeah, some questions which I want to answer here, or which I think are going to be the way which the video is going to go is range bet flop, question mark. Do we want to bet? Is Jack 8 suited betting, for example? I'm assuming the underpairs bet, etc. What size on the flop? I think that's also important. This is why I've given 4 sizings because there's maybe merits to betting really small on the flop with a lot of hands and then starting to go polar on the turn. Maybe there is more merit for going big on the flop straight away and getting a hand like Queen 6 suited to fold versus a big bet. The next question is going to be which hands want to bluff turn. So typically a good hand to often bluff the turn here will be an underpair. So if you have pocket 4s, your opponent's very capped. He has a lot of King X, 10X, Jack X, Queen X, Ace X. He's in a lot of trouble versus your pocket pair. And versus your pocket pair, you can hit your very clean rivet out, but you can also just get your opponent to fold a lot of hands where he's very capped and he's in a lot of trouble. So which hands want to bluff turn? The next question is going to be any small turn size. And 5, worst value bet on the turn. Because I think on these kind of turns, there is sometimes some betting going on with some random like Queen 8s and Queen 9s because your opponent's got a lot of gut shots, a lot of worse hands. So what's the worst value bet on the turn, I think, is also an important question. Hand number 6, river sizing for imposition. We're talking about if it's a blank or not, obviously. River sizing for imposition. Is there much shoving going on here? We are 60 big blinds deep, just in case we didn't realize that. And then worst river value raise for out of position. And go to bluffs for out of position. And then last but not least, which hands bluff catching construction. So on the river here, do we want to call ace deuce ahead of a hand like queen jack? I think this is something which I think is going to be muddled up for a lot of people. So getting this kind of nailed down is going to be good. So these are going to be the 8 questions which I'm going to want to answer. I think it's nice to do the videos this way. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's a good structure of how to do the videos. Essentially, we basically start with a board. We start with the ranges, and then we write down all the stuff we want to answer. And then from there, we go into the sim and start to answer the questions and have a good understanding of basically everything. So I've run this already, so let's have a look. So we're going to see that out of position obviously goes to the check. We're going to see that in position goes for essentially a range bet with a lot of different sizes. So this is kind of interesting straight away. So there's loads of really big betting. So some really big betting is going on of 150% pot. Some of that's happening. Some 80% betting is going on here. You can see here bet 5 is going on into 6. There's some bet 50 going on, which is going to be third pot. And there is a little bit of third pot, but no combo is more than 20% frequency. So we can kind of wipe out third pot and then think about the other sizings. So we can see here that a hand like Jack 8 suited isn't range betting. So we've answered our question there that there are some hands which don't really love to bet. So if we look at the EV difference between Jack 8 checking and Jack 8 betting, like the highest EV option is actually to go for a check. But, you know, if we bet, it's completely fine too. It's basically the same EV. So some hands here essentially not really, especially because Jack 8's typically wanting to go into like a smaller sizing rather than a really big size. So if we want to maybe go for like if we want to maybe go for like a range bet sizing of a certain amount, probably what we're going to end up doing is betting around about 2/3 pot, so 4 into 6. It's going to kind of combine the really big bets, the half pot. If you want to use 2 sizings, what I would recommend is using half pot and 150% pot, because there are some hands which really want to go into this bigger bet size. So a hand like 10-7, a hand like 10-6, which like 10-8, 10-9 don't mind going small, because if they get called, they have really good equity. They have a double gut shot. 10-8 can hit a 9, or it can hit a king. 10-9 can hit a 9, or it can hit a king. A hand like 10-7 is only got a straight draw one way. So we can see that a hand like 10-7 really wants to get fold equity now, because when we go for 150% pot, we're going to see that our opponent folds a lot of Queen X, folds all of his Jack X essentially. So getting this fold equity straight away with our 10-6, 10-7 is going to be really crucial. So we can see why we want to have this really big bet size. And we can see that some natural hands falling into here, like ace, king, like some king 10s potentially, like some king X hands also. Like some queen jack, which unblocks ace X and unblocks the gut shots. That makes sense. So our range kind of for the really big bet kind of constructed around, 10-6, 10-7, some king X hands, which are gut shots, but also have an overcard to the jack, also have an overcard to the queen, ace king for value. But there, a lot of hands just want to typically go into a relatively smaller sizing. If you eventually went to go for a 2/3 sizing with your range here, that would be perfectly fine. And that's probably how I would play my range on this kind of board. So if we look at 10-7, the difference in EV, we can see the EV difference is so similar. We're not making much more EV at all by going really big. So I would kind of go for a range bet of 2/3 and do that. So what I'm going to do here is just take a second to rerun the sim, just because I want to go into that node where we have all of our combos, and I'm going to force in position to out of position to check and in position to bet. And what I'm going to do is give in position only the option to bet 75%, because I think that's going to be how we're going to play, and we're going to range bet this way. What I want to look at just quickly is the in positions out of position in positions equity. So out of positions equity here is going to be 36%. So very, very bad. You don't often see too much worse than 36%. And in positions EV equity, sorry, is going to be 63. Out of positions EV is going to be 1.2, and in positions EV is going to be 4.7. So considerably higher. So many hands just with dark green, light green, which have loads and loads of EV, and even some hands here which don't have a strong hand also having a bunch of EV. So yeah, just remind ourselves that just remind ourselves of the EV. The EV of our strategy of imposition is 4.7 when we use 4 different bet sizes, and we force us and we're allowed to check. So we have 5 different options. So just remember 4.7. If I simplify here and just allow 75%, I'm going to show you what happens in 1 second. Just going to write here EV 417. So I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, so I've ran this now. I haven't looked at any of the results. Let's have a look. So he's going to check, and well, let's have a look. It's just imposition EV. So the imposition imposition equity is obviously going to remain the same because the ranges haven't changed. The imposition EV has stayed exactly the same at 4.7. So we're not losing any EV by having this simplified strategy. And this is going to just be something which you need to realize, that having all of these sophisticated sizings on the flop and mixing this and mixing that, you just don't need to do it. If you just run this one size in here, which we're going to be able to implement really well, and we know exactly what we're doing, exactly which combos we're getting to the turn with, a lot easier to study this strategy, etc. This is going to be what we want to do. So we're going to go for the range bet. Versus this, one of the questions was, well, actually I didn't write that question down. One question I want to have here is, I'm just going to call it 2B. Does he want to have a raise in range? I think this is really a really important question, because does he want to just flat his king 10 because he wants to have the EV of me bluffing into him on later streets? Or is he wanting king 10 to just raise straight away because he can get value, and maybe he starts bluff raising like 10x and king x as well? That's something which is really interesting, I think. I think typically people play mostly call only in these situations and don't have a raise in range. That's how I think population play. But let's have a look. So bet 4, we're going to see there is some raising going on here, but this is an interesting thing. We can see that we're getting 56% of his range to fold straight away, which is a lot. So we're folding out a lot of hands. We're folding out a lot of gut shots with the kings, a lot of gut shots with the 10, even with the backdoor flush draw. So like 10-7 of spades is folding here with the backdoor flush draw, for example. We can see even a hand like queen 9 suited with no backdoor flush draw is folding, which is like a pair is folding, which is something. Again, the king x is folding here without a backdoor flush draw. So we're getting a lot of hands to fold. Like if you think about which hands we're betting with, we're betting 8-5 suited and getting king 8 suited with a backdoor flush draw. Well, not without a backdoor flush draw to fold, which is a pretty big win, you know, like pretty nice for that to happen. We're bluffing a hand like pocket 4s and getting king 9 to fold, which has, you know, around about 50% equity, whatever, against us. So there's a lot of really, really good betting going on here for in positions. We bet and we face mostly a call. The hands which do raise are going to be Queen Jack, the first raise, King 10, the second raise, King 10 suited, going for the slow play, some 10x with a backdoor flush draw, choosing to bluff raise, some king x with a backdoor flush draw, choosing to bluff raise. What's interesting to note here is that we choose the lower combos because we want our opponent, if you look at the ranges here, our opponent's range in position has a lot of these kind of combos, a lot of middling kind of combos, and not many of these kind of combos. So the first hands that in position is going to fold versus the check raise is going to be hands with a 9, an 8, a 7, a 6 in them. So you can see that when we decide to raise, we don't want to have a 9, we don't want to have an 8, we don't want to have a 7 in them. Like 10-8 raises because it has really good equity as a double gut shot, but you know, we way rather raise 10-2 rather than 10-6. And people are like, well, 10-6 and 10-2 is kind of the same hand, but it's all about unblocking our opponent's bet folds on the flops. This is why we choose a hand like 10-2 suited to go for the check raise. So 10-2 suited is a really, really clean check raise here. So we go for the call in game here. The turn's going to go a brick, so we're going to call it Badugi. We're going to call it a Badugi 6, and it's going to go check, and we're going to see what sizings in position wants to use. You can see here in position, we want to mostly go for 2/3, no smaller betting going on. We can see that we bluff our gut shots very aggressively. So our king x gut shots bluff aggressively, our 10x gut shots bluff aggressively. Something which is really interesting here is one of our first bluffs that we go for, and you're going to see this very often in theory and throughout the videos which I speak about, is the turned pair. The turned pair is such a crucial hand to bluff with, because if you think about a hand like 9-6, when we bluff, I'm going to show you what he folds out, but we block some of the strongest hands now in out of positions range, because the strongest hand in out of positions range, apart from King 10, which slow played, is going to be Ace 6 because it's a turn 2 pair. Then it's going to be Queen 6. Then it's going to be Jack 6. So blocking so many strong hands in our opponent's range is really, really crucial here. So yeah, something which is interesting here, which I think people probably overdo, is the underpairs are not bluffing. So people often just bluff like deuces to nines pure, and they're like, oh, I've got an underpair, really good spot to bluff. But you can see that we already have so many bluffs in our range anyway. We already have all the King X, we already have all the 10X, that we don't want to go too crazy here. However, I am going to show you the response, and if you think the response is maybe not realistic, then we can maybe change some stuff around. But typically, I would say the main difference, the way that the population plays, a population over bluff with their underpairs with no equity. That's what I think is going to be the most common thing. So you can see pocket twos bluffs here sometimes, and then other people are like, okay, well, I'm going to bluff deuces always. What's important to note here is that on the flop, when we bet big, we already folded out a bunch of hands. We folded out a bunch of Jack X already. We folded out a bunch of Queen X already. We folded out a bunch of 10X gut shots already. So the range which continues on the flop versus our big bet is often going to be a relatively strong range that we don't actually have as much fold equity from. We're set. Well, I'm going to show you what we fold out, but on the 6 of hearts here, we're going to see that when we go for this big bet, we're essentially just making these suited combos fold out. And there's not going to be that many offsuit combos which we're folding. So we're folding the suited combos out, but still, it's going to add up to quite a lot. We're still getting around about 40% fold equity here. Out of position is just going for the slow play with everything, not raising basically any hand. Queen 6 is one hand, which is a very natural raise, because when you raise Queen 6, your opponent's going to have Ace X in his range. You block him having Ace Queen, pocket queens. You get value basically. So yeah, we're going to go for a call, and the river is going to be a deuce. So the river is going to be a deuce, and he's going to check. And then you can see here that in position, we don't even want to go for the 50% bet. The only size in which we want to have here is all in. So we only go for all in, and you can see that we bluff all of our 6x, which is blocking the really strong hands in our opponent's range. We go all in with we don't go all in with any weak ace x hand. And if you watch my video about river bet size, which is really crucial, it'll be under this one in the category. It's very important to watch. I'm not going to repeat all the stuff again, but essentially, because out of position has so many strong hands in his range, we don't want to bet small with a hand like ace 8, because when we bet small, our opponent can reopen the action and bluff a hand like jack 9 or jack 10 or king jack or whatever it may be. And then we bet fold ace 8. And when we do bet small and get called, one, he can call us with a better hand, and two, we're not making much money when he calls. Like, if we bet 30%, we're only making 30% of the pot, but then we're not good all the time, so we end up making around about 1% of the pot. And then if he starts bluffing us sometimes, it just doesn't become attractive to bet as wide as ace 8, ace 9, ace 10. So because our value betting range is so tight, we want to go extremely polarized, and because of that, we want to go for an all-in sizing. So we're going all in with any two pair. We're going all in with any straight, obviously. Queen Jack is still going all in, unblocking the ace X. We're going all in as a bluff with our 6x hands. We're going all in with a bluff with pocket 10s, which is blocking king 10. And yeah, it's going to have the highest amount of combos blocking king 10, I guess. We are going all in with king 10, which is a straight, which we said. Again, we're bluffing all in with our 6x. We're value jamming our deuces. And yeah, we're bluffing some of our king X hands here. So we're bluffing some king 4s, king 6s, king 8s. We're just going to block some of our opponent's attractive bluff catchers, I guess, like king queen. And it also blocks some king 10 as well. So yeah, I assume our opponents call. Well, a good thing about this is we value jam ace king for value. Ace king goes into the value jam, so our opponent ends up wanting to bluff catch king queen instead of queen 10, I guess, because queen 10 isn't blocking our value portion of our range, whereas when he has king queen, he blocks ace king, which is going to be crucial. So because of that, we want to bluff with king x ourselves. That's kind of how it works out. And you're going to see that 10x hands actually start to give up. So when we go all in here on the river, we're going to see that our opponent is indifferent with ace x, so he starts to fold a bunch of ace x. You can see, yeah, This is what I was speaking about. Queen 10 always folds and king queen mostly calls. That's why, as the in position player, we really want to bluff with king x ourselves rather than 10x, because we want to unblock 10x. Unblocking 10x here a lot, unless we have the really good blockers of pocket 10s. Unblocking 10x here is pretty good because a lot of his folds are coming from 10x. Queen 10, Jack 10, Jack 10 offsuit, Queen 10 offsuit, etc. So yeah, Ace 6 obviously can't fold to pair. Jack 6, Queen 6, easy calls. He's not folding Ace 10 because Ace 10 blocks, the Ace X hands, it blocks the straights. Like, it's just too good of a hand. But these lower combos of Ace X, they're basically just indifferent. And the suits don't really matter. The suits are not really changing too much of what's going on here. Yeah. So I had some questions which I wanted to answer. I'm going to answer these right now. So question number 1 was, do we want to range bet on the flop? Well, right now this is a no locked range bet, but we can see that we definitely do want to do this. The EV loss was very small. It was nothing actually. And this is a very easy strategy to implement rather than using 4 sizings. So yes, we do want to go for a range bet. What's our flop size? We worked out we want to go for 2/3 pot. 2B, does he want to have a raise in range? We can see that he does want to have a raise in range. He's incentivized to especially raising these 10 twos, 10 threes, 10 fours, king threes, king twos, which are going to be gut shots, and unblocking a lot of folds is going to be one of the reasons why we raise. So yeah, we want to always unblock the block, and we can see that 10-4, 10-3, 10-2 definitely unblocks the block. So yeah, this is going to be a bet and a call. The next question was, which hands want to bluff the turn? So an interesting thing here was on the 6, we can see that the underpairs don't really want to bluff too much. The bluffs are going to come from equity-driven hands, which also have good blockers. So we're going to be bluffing here with our King X and with our 10X. The underpairs don't actually do that good a job of bluffing because they block a lot of our opponent's folds. So some of the first hands that our opponents fold are going to be King 7 of diamonds, King 7 of clubs, King 7 of spades, Queen 7 suited, Jack 7 suited. That's going to be a lot of folds from our opponent. So actually having these pairs block a lot of the folds anyway. So that's going to be something else. Any small turn sizing? No, we're going to see that the turn sizing is always going to be large. And that the reason why it's large is because we're going very polarized. Hands like Ace 2 to Ace 5 aren't going for value on the turn. Hands like King Queen aren't going for value on the turn. So yeah, we're going for a very large polarized sizing. The next question is, what's the worst value bet on the turn? We're value betting on the turn with kind of like Ace 7 plus, where our kicker can maybe play on the river, because Ace 7 against, say, Ace Deuce, we're going to beat on the river on like a 4, a 5, a 3. So yeah, we're going to go like Ace 7 plus on the river. So yeah, this is going to be a bet. River sizing for imposition. So we're going to see that the imposition river sizing is going to be shove only, mostly shove only. We don't want to reopen the pot on the river because our opponent is actually, whilst he is kind of capped, he also has a lot of strong hands that he kind of slow played too, and a lot of hands which didn't want to fast play for value. So when we have a hand like Ace 7, our opponent's always going to have Ace 8, Ace 9, Ace 10, which we'll call. And these hands, kicker is going to play when the board has run out like this. So we don't want to go for thin value with Ace 8, Ace 9, because we're going to run either into our opponent's better hand, or we're going to run into a spot where our opponent can turn his hand into a bluff. And the next video you're going to watch is about river bet sizing, which is going to be a pretty crucial video to watch, I think. So yeah, we're going to only use an all-in sizing and not even going for a half pot sizing. The worst river value raise out of position, he doesn't get to raise for value for out of position because we don't give him the opportunity to raise for value, which is a really crucial thing to remember. Go to bluffs out of position. There's non bluff catching construction for our opponent. That's something which we can talk about. So we go for a all in here as in position, and we can see that on the river. First of all, we spoke a lot about the merits between King, Queen, and Queen 10, even though it's essentially the same hand because I'm never value shoving like King, Queen myself. So Queen 10 has just as much showdown value as King, Queen has. We spoke about the blocker effects here and the crucial factor of having a king in the range here. In terms of other stuff, we can see that a hand like Ace 4 is going to perform as a better bluff catcher than Queen 10. And one of the reasons why is a lot of the bluffs from our opponent whilst we do block value like king 10 and queens and stuff like that, a lot of the bluffs from our opponents are going to come from 10x. So they're going to bluff, like 10 nines or 10 8s or 10 sixes, whatever it may be. Same with hand like king jack. Like king jack, they're going to bluff their king 5 suited. So if we look at the range construction here, a lot of bluffs are coming from king 4s, king 3s, king 7s, 10 7s, 10 8s, jack 10s, whatever it may be. So on the river, when we're bluff catching, we actually rather just have a top pair and unblock the bluffs rather than trying to go for some really genius call, blocking this, blocking that, and blocking the other. So yeah, I think this has been a good video, hopefully. I think it's a spot which happens a lot. I think people probably misplay a lot of the nodes throughout. And I think hopefully now after you watch this, you won't misplay them again. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and I'm going to end this one now.